Maverick.
A maverick.
Maverick.
I don't know what you consider a maverick.
I suppose it's unique.
Different.
Somebody with a touch of genius.
Wild and crazy.
In between outlaw and the old west.
Supremely self-confident, occasionally misguided, but always interesting.
Either you're a maverick or you're not. That's the way it is. An artist.
You expect the unexpected, and that's who he was and what he was.
When you go to the golf course, who are you going to watch? The best player or the worst players? The best players, isn't it? Okay. If the sponsors wants the people to come to the golf course and watch, they needed the best players. And to have the best players, they have to pay the best players. So that's one thing that everybody must remember. The best players bring the television, the best players give the prestige to the tournament, and the best players bring the people to watch. I don't say anymore.
Seve inspired people.
The unbelievable was commonplace for Seve.
I've probably got about 50 or 60 ways of shooting 65. Seve's got 10,000 ways.
He could extract himself from the worst possible situations and come through smelling like a rose.
Men would like to have been him, and a lot of women wanted to be with him.
The woman that used to come out and watch him, it was unbelievable.
He would use his presence to affect people as well.
If Seve knew he could push your buttons, he would.
He'd empty out your wallet in about 3 or 4 hours.
He spent his entire career trying to influence rules officials.
He finally lost the plot.
This is just something that he was born with. You realize there is another level, without a question.
Brilliance, flair, charm, charisma. Severiano Ballesteros had it all. And he knew it.
I create a lot of shots, and I produce a lot of shots throughout my career than most people. And probably that's why the majority of the people always love to watch Seve Ballesteros playing on the golf course.
Men would like to have been him, and a lot of women wanted to be with him. He was not only an accomplished, creative, exciting, swashbuckling golfer, he was, if you like, sexy and charismatic. And he was very inclusive and wore all his emotions on both sleeves.
He played purely an attacking game. He always would engage with his gallery.
Stay still if you don't mind, please. I know you're nervous, but I am too.
The woman that used to come out and watch him, it was unbelievable. You know, the guy, he appealed to the simplest farmer's daughter to royalty.
The minute you met Seve, he was this handsome young man with eyes that were very piercing, and you felt, well, this guy's got a passion.
He's such a great-looking guy. He had this charisma, and he portrayed this, you know, this bullfighter, this swashbuckling debonair. I don't know how you could put it. But we were all envious of him. I mean, we really were, because he had everything that we all wanted.
He won 5 majors, 87 events globally, which is an astounding number, it really is. It was way better than just the 5 majors. For what he did and the way he did it, he led European golf.
The first of those majors came at the 1979 Open Championship at Royal Lytham. In his final round, one tee shot finished in a temporary car park, only for Seve to recover in typical fashion, with a birdie that helped the Spaniard claim his first claret jug.
He could get it up and down from the trash can, from the garbage, from the car park, you name it, he could do it.
There's never been a better short game. He could get it up and down from anywhere. The greens could be downhill, could be uphill, could be side hill. It didn't matter. It was there was always a way. And that was part of his genius, and it was genius.
I loved going in a bunker with him. So, okay, Seve, show me what to do here, you know, and he made us all look like idiots. He was one of those guys you never wanted to go for $1 a shot out of a bunker because he'd empty out your wallet in about 3 or 4 hours, you know.
Such ability was perfectly demonstrated when the Open returned to Lytham in 1988. Playing with Nick Price and Nick Faldo on the final day, Seve shot 65 to clinch his 5th major. And he finished in customary style.
Well, the chip in 18 at Royal Lytham in 88. It was a master stroke, you know, he's on the downslope, side slope, the ball's below his feet, and he's got to improvise. And, you know, Seve, you'd go in there and he'd try all these different things, but eventually drop that left shoulder and hit this most beautiful chip. And then nearly, I mean, it probably should have gone in.
As soon as when I hit it, I saw the ball up in the air, I knew it was perfect. And that was it.
That really was like seeing a true artist at work. You know, you see the best of Borg or the best of Ayrton Senna or Eric Clapton. When you see a guy, whatever sport, when they have a day when they're just unbelievable. And that was probably his, I think that was his finest day.
I've probably got about 50 or 60 ways of shooting 65. Seve's got 10,000 ways. I've got to hit 14 greens, or I'll hit 16 greens. Seve could hit 3 greens and shoot 65. He could hit no fairways and shoot 65. He'd hold 2 bunker shots. It was just, you never knew what was coming with Seve. And that's why people loved to watch him.
If you go back and look at all the great championships that he's won, he was in some very strange spots, but it never made any difference to him. And this you can't teach. This is just something he was born with, and then he incorporated that in his golf.
He had an artistry about him, and very much of a swashbuckling style. And we all knew when he set up to the ball, we knew something exciting was going to happen.
There was a tree right behind him, and he's looking up over this wall, and I thought, what are you doing? Like, you know, just chip it out, you know. She says, Billy, I see this shot, and I'm looking at this gap that's about this big, over this 8-foot wall with half a backswing, through these fir trees, over a swimming pool. I'm like, you've finally lost the plot, like, you know. I said, please, just chip it out sideways, wedge it on the green, you can make par. And he just gave me that. It's okay, I have this shot there. And sure enough, he got in there with a pitching wedge, half a backswing, up, over the wall, through the foot gap, over the swimming pool, over 50-foot pine trees, and finished 2 or 3 yards short of the green. It was an unbelievable shot. And then he chipped it in for birdie.
Because I was not allowed to play or practice on the golf course, I used to play on the beach, and this is what I used to do. You can build your own golf course by using your imagination. Correct. I used to come over here and take my 3-iron with my 2 or 3 balls. I never got any more. And hit over those bushes into the green. And then, as soon as I hit it, I used to run quickly down to make sure nobody's steal the ball from me, and then come back, hit it again, come back, hit it again, come back until I get tired or until I feel happy with the shots. On the green too.
He's the type of player that you never knew was going to happen as far as where the ball was going to go, but he always knew that he could extract himself from the worst possible situations and come through smelling like a rose.
He was a magician. He could invent shots, create shots everywhere. But once he had a certain feel for the round, he could go and shoot really, really low.
He still hit, to me, one of the best shots I've ever seen. He hooked his ball in the trees, and he finds his ball, and it's up against a tree. He all of a sudden takes this 3-iron or something, and he starts turning it over. He starts taking practice swings this way. There were a crowd of people around me were watching him, and he just takes about 3 really, really big practice swings, and all of a sudden he just whack, he just hits it. and it comes out low and hooked it up the fairway.
To me, he was more like an artist painting on a beautiful canvas.
But with talent came temperament. Off the course as well as on it, Seve's single-mindedness frequently saw him at loggerheads with the authorities. In the early 80s, appearance fees became a major issue. The Spaniard knew his worth.
You know how much I give to golf? I start since I was 9, and since then I live until I am right now 23. This way, all for golf. You think this is not enough? I think it's enough.
I've often referred to it as a difference in perception, if not reality, between the PGA Tour stance on appearance money and the European Tour stance.
Life is more important than anything else, right? So golf owns me something, or maybe even, but I don't own anything to golf. You don't agree with that?
We always felt we were getting or copying the thin end of the wedge in terms of the adverse publicity. And it was a very big issue, particularly at a time when prize money in Europe was relatively low. Those of us charged to act on behalf of all the players were firstly charged to try and raise prize money, not appearance money. So we were on opposite sides on that one.
A maverick is somebody who marches to the sound, the beat of their own drum, if you like, someone who is secure and confident in their own opinion and are willing to back it against a majority opinion if they believe they're right. Seve was always convinced that he was right. He wasn't always right, but he was convinced that he was always right.
Ultimately, Seve's stance cost him his place on the 1981 Ryder Cup team.
All seemed fine until his then manager arrived in London and more or less decided to publicly announce that unless the sponsors within Europe would pay X, Seve would not be playing. And a number of us, of which I was one, saw it really, and sadly, as a form of blackmail. And there's no question that for the whole of 1981, Seve really cut a sad figure and was on the outside looking in. And it was in those circumstances that he was not chosen and did not qualify to play in the 81 team at Walton Heath.
Across the Atlantic, Seve also had issues with the US PGA, and not just with the authorities, but with many of his fellow pros.
They saw Seve as a threat to their livelihood, someone who was taking column inches away from them in terms of publicity, someone who was winning too much money, someone who was becoming too important on what they regarded as their tour. And at that time, the PGA Tour in America was a very insular place, so they were less than welcome.
In America, they were reluctant to give Seve the nod, if you like, as being the greatest player. They said he used gamesmanship or he did this or that. It was almost like a sort of, they were jealous.
Well, I think there's always those protectionists. Personally, I would turn a blind eye to it, so I'd have to say I didn't really see it. I knew that there might have been some there, but I think a lot of it was just jealousy.
And he also felt that at times they treated him with disrespect. In the early days, when they'd be announcing the players on the tee, they would regularly say Steve Ballesteros rather than Seve Ballesteros, and they weren't being deliberately rude or whatever. They just couldn't get their heads around the fact that there was a guy who was called Seve. They just thought there was a T missing. But that was, feel like, was small-town America, but one of the things that irritated Seve.
Seve would ultimately be banned from the US Tour, but his frosty relationship with the European authorities had thawed, and he returned to the Ryder Cup fold in 1983.
Tony Jacklin was named captain, and Tony Jacklin called me and said, I need to talk to you, and we have a meeting at the Belfry. And he said, listen, Seve, I need you very badly to be on the team. And I said, Tony, no, I'm not playing anymore in the Ryder Cup. Look what they did to me in '81. And I went back to Spain. I talked to my brothers, and they all say, Seve, you have no choice, you know. Seve, the British people love you. They need you for the Ryder Cup. I called Tony Jacklin and said, Tony, I'll be part of your team.
He was fantastic because, you know, he brought his enthusiasm was something special. I've seen Seve elated, you know, I've seen him lying on the floor in tears. I mean, he gave his heart and soul to that event. It was his real passion to beat America. You know, at that era, Americans didn't like him. You know, press gave him a real hard time. So he really wanted to beat Americans.
He didn't particularly like the American way of life. He didn't like American food to start with. He did like American women, I seem to recall. And also he felt that American golfers, too many of them at that point, were too arrogant and too swaggering and believed too much they were the best in the world.
He was tough to play because he seemingly would hit it all over the place and beat you.
And he was so intense on the golf course. When he missed a shot, you know, he bamming the club and mumbling Spanish words under his breath. You never heard him use them in English, but you knew what they meant.
Seve was always into everything. He liked to be in charge, and he liked to be in everybody's face, and it definitely upped the ante in the Ryder Cup, no question.
Seve was like a one-man army. That's what Seve was like. He was awesome. The hard thing was finding somebody to play with him that wasn't intimidated, just playing along with him.
First time I played the Ryder Cup with him, that's the thing that I learned the most. He's a guy that never gives up. It doesn't matter what the situation is.
He was crash bang wallop golfer. He was a bull in a china shop, and you know, he took control of the area. He was a difficult guy to beat. He was a true competitor. He would use his presence to affect people as well.
You might think you are competitive, but when you play with Seve and you see how he thinks on the golf course, how he tries on the golf course, you realize there is another level, without a question.
Even when you weren't playing him, he was going to try and come out and watch and follow and be involved in your match some way, somehow. That's Seve, you know, believed in taking gamesmanship to the highest form.
Like a possessed human being. I mean, he got under Azinger's skin and tried to at Kiowa. Just because if Seve knew he could push your buttons, he would.
You're switching the compression on the tee. I don't think so. Oh, you did? I'm sure you did a couple of
One particular match that was at Kiowa. It was Chip Beck and Paul Azinger against Jose Maria and myself.
There was something going on because when we teed off, one was using a red ball, the other guy was using a black ball, and all of a sudden the holes didn't match.
I know that Chip hit a 100 compression on number 7. I'm sure about it. You know what? And then on number 9, he hit a 90 compression. I'm sure about that, Paul.
So I approached Seve and we talked about it and we passed the information to the captain. By the time we get to the 9th hole, both captains knew what was going on.
They decided to have a 25-minute chat on the 10th tee, arguing who were right and who were wrong.
Paul Azinger denied all the time that they were switching the balls.
The final decision was that nothing was going to change the result at that time. And then is when I looked at Seve and I said, Seve, because Seve was still trying to, you know, get something out of it, you know. And I said to Seve, don't you worry, let's concentrate, let's play these 9 holes and we can still win this match.
Seve and Ollie came back in 500. They won 5 holes in the next 7 or 8 holes and beat them 2-1.
That was probably the most remarkable win from Jose Maria and myself in the Ryder Cup.
It wasn't just in the Ryder Cup that Seve found success. 5 times he was crowned World Match Play Champion.
Match play is different than medal play. You know, match play is more you switch according to what your opponent is doing. You can play conservative, you can play attack, you can play this a different way.
He always had this in-your-face kind of attitude. I'm going to beat you. I don't care what you throw at me. And it doesn't matter how badly I'm playing. I'm going to figure out a way how to beat you. And that's what he did.
He was the supreme alpha male. And in no way in golf can you prove yourself to be the alpha male, the leader of the pack, the guy with the biggest chest, than you could in match play.
He could intimidate people. When you first played with him, he wanted to let you know that he was top dog.
There was always things going on around Seve. Things happened around Seve when you played with him. Not meant, but very intimidating. Very difficult to beat Seve when you're playing with him.
He often developed a cough in an important match play event. It wasn't so much that he coughed on somebody's backswing, but he would just cough to interrupt their concentration.
There was that one incident when we were playing the World Match Play where he choked on a piece of fruitcake. I want to say he never did gamesmanship with me, but that was too obvious. There were surreptitious things that he used to do, that he used to intimidate you in different ways. And that was fine. You know, it wasn't something that we didn't expect in those days.
I played with him once, and him and Craig Parry's trying to putt, and Seve's got a pitch mark thing out, cleaning his metal spikes, and it's making noise. Craig stops, says, Seve, come on. Seve says, oh, sorry. And so Craig lines his putt up again. He just gets over to do it again. Seve's doing the exact same thing again.
1, 2 claps.
Okay.
Back as far as I want, or go back to the tee.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do that.
Which way you think I should go?
He spent his entire career trying to influence rules officials and convince them of things. His greatest adversary is still the chief referee on the European Tour, John Paramore. And once at Valderrama, I think John and Seve spent something like 28 minutes discussing whether he had the right to move his ball from behind a tree because there were animal droppings nearby. Well, if there were animal droppings, it was because there was so much bullshit coming out of Seve's mouth.
Rules officials in Europe who were terrified of him, they'd come over there and it was like, well, okay, Seve, he's got a bad lie there. And the guy would say, well, what's the problem, Seve? And Seve would say, so where do I drop? And already he's got, you know, the rules official on the back foot.
Where's the referee?
I played with him in Spain somewhere, and he'd hit it way offline onto a road or something, and he called for a ruling, and this official came out, and I wandered over just to sort of have a look and tried not to stick my oar in, but you know, Seve came up with about 25 different ways he thought he should get a drop from near this road, and eventually he got a drop. I mean, the official was defenceless.
Tony Johnson and Seve are playing, and there was one ball a yard in from the fairway, and another one about another 10, 12 yards further on. That was about 4 yards in on the fairway. So Tony automatically went to the shorter ball, and he got up there, and this ball's in this huge divot. Anyway, he called Seve over, and he said, Seve, there was a sprinkler over there. And he said to Seve, he said, listen, Seve, he says, if I stand like this, and he took this ridiculous stance, where he put his left foot on the sprinkler and tried to chop at the ball, he says, do I get a drop? And Seve said, no drop. So then he took the other foot and put it on the sprinkler, took this ridiculous stance, stretching out like this, and he says, can I get a drop now? Seve said, no. Tony said, good, this is your ball. And that's how, you know, Seve worked.
In terms of officialdom, whether it was those of us charged with trying to run the tour and find sponsors and prize money, or those charged with upholding the rules and regulations on the golf course, yes, he would be tough with them. He would regard us all from time to time as being expendable, and we loved him all the more for that.
Move back, please.
Despite his battles with opponents and authorities, Seve's charisma and maverick ways saw him become one of golf's most compelling and most loved figures.
Well, I would like to be remembered from people as someone who really loved the game, played the game with passion, as someone who really was a good ambassador for the game of golf.
Great presence of the man. Very few people walk into a room and you know they're there without looking at them.
He's one of the most charismatic and entertaining golfers we've ever had in the history of the game.
He showed that this sometimes rather fusty, old-fashioned, very, very ancient game could also be modern, sexy and exciting.
Tremendous character. Don't get characters like him anymore.
I was proud to and privileged to have seen, you know, all that greatness.
Seve brought a lot more to the game than just golf.
He was so unique and the ultimate maverick.
More than a golf professional, I will describe myself as an artist. some kind of magnetism always show up during the round. Always something happened that it was very unusual. And I think that has been the key why people like me so much.